Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Pod Divided here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Many forget, but Tennessee out here looking like the best team in college baseball. Once again, raking all over the place. We can't find enough lineup spots for how many heavy hitters that this Tennessee lineup has. Once again, Tennessee basketball obviously getting revenge on the Texas A&M Aggies over the weekend as they looked and now are number one in the conference in basketball once again, with an Alabama date looming in a week. But yeah, Everything School HQ in full bloom as always. And so you know what that means. When I have this kind of opening, that means my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green, is on the other line, because I don't really do this to anybody else. Just Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm glad you saved this for me, and don't do this to your listeners all the other days of the week. You know, that's at least you save them that. But yeah, you know, it is what it is. Tennessee, we're not about to get into college baseball right now. This is way too early. We're just college basketball is in full swing. I'll give you some college basketball talk, but baseball, no chance.
Incorrect. Baseball is awesome. College baseball is
We're
fantastic.
talking preseason rankings and flexing on most likable lists. I don't know what's going on over here.
Hey, Everything School HQ in full bloom. Best college baseball program in America. Rick Barnes, best team ever at UT. Things are looking up. Dalton Knecht looking like a top 10 pick. Zakai Ziegler out here, one rebound, 1 point away from a triple dub, second all time in Tennessee history. Man, I don't know what to say. Number one seed looming for the Vols in that regard. Man, everything's coming up Tennessee right now. It's a good time to be a Tennessee Volunteer and sports fan up here in Tennessee.
The college triple-double stats are crazy because it just does not happen nearly as much as you think. Like, I think J.J. Frazier may have gotten one at Georgia a couple years ago, and it was like the 10th in like SEC history or something like that. It was a kind of a crazy number. I think it's been done in the tournament only like a handful of times.
Yeah,
I remember D Wade, and was it to get to the Final Four that one year with Marquette? I remember having a triple-double, and it's like it's an everyday thing in the NBA where they're just scoring 130 points every night. You're seeing a lot more triple doubles.
Absolutely. But hey, you know, it's a cool thing. Cool mark. Zakai came up just short, but you know, there's going to be more opportunities for Zakai and company to get that elusive triple dub, as you mentioned, with the NCAA tournament and all that kind of stuff. So more opportunities, but most of all, Tennessee basketball, very, very good. Matt Green. Something that I don't think most college football fans is good right now, and you kind of knew this was coming, and I imagine you got this sense too, that this is kind of where the wind was blowing, is that like once you expand from 2 to 4 to 12, the reaction was, oh, well, obviously they're going to try and expand it a little bit more because you want more seats at the table. I will guess more seats from the Power 2 at the table in these in the college football playoff in years to come. But Matt Green, what was your immediate reaction to the report that the powers that be are already looking ahead to a 14-team college football playoff when we haven't even had one iteration of the 12-team playoff?
I think like most college football fans, I think we all had kind of the same collective groan, just eye roll. Just like, of course they are. Like, why? I don't know why. Who is pushing for this? I guess is my initial reaction. Like, who went back last year and was like, you know, I feel like Notre Dame, you know, they deserved a shot down the stretch last year. Like LSU, you know, that team should have had a shot to win a national championship a year ago. It's like, no, that's not how the sport works. Like, yes, there's every other sport in America, not around the world, but every other American sport. You know, you play the regular season, you get better as the year goes, and then, you know, you hopefully have a chance to make a playoff run, you know? And that's cool. That works for basically every sport. But college football is better than every other sport in America. And maybe it wasn't the postseason that made it the best sport. Maybe it wasn't the lack of, or the amateurism that made it the best sport. Maybe it wasn't like the guys having to sit out if they wanted to go team to team, but something made college football the best sport. And if you change everything about the sport, there's reason to worry that it's no longer going to be the best sport. And so I just worry that we're just changing the face of this entire sport that we love more, that has more passion than every other sport in America, essentially. Like, it's just the home atmospheres, just the stadiums, just the passion that these institutions have, just more than pro teams, really, that can threaten to leave the city if they don't get a new stadium. Like, it's just different in college, and I hate to see more and more change like this, because I was kind of the belief, like you said, we expected this. I was kind of the belief that they jumped to 12 so that they wouldn't do this. Like, yeah, we went from 2 to 4, but that didn't really feel like 2 was nothing, kind of. You know what I mean? I guess before the BCS it was literally nothing, but 2 is not a playoff. So you went to 4. I'm just a believer that 4 worked, and we're seeing more expansion that seemed to make 4 work better. The fewer we only had Power 4 conferences now, the 4 makes even more sense than it did before. And now we're going straight to 12. I don't know, man. I'm not liking the direction we're going.
I think more than anything, what they're really struggling with is rapid change, right? Like, this is where you lose folks, because people can adapt. People adapted to the BCS because the BCS was not always a thing. Like, college football fans grew up. My dad, your dad. I mean, this was not. They grew up with a different version of college football. They grew up with a different playoff format. They also had time. You know what I mean? There was big gaps between the BCS to the 14 playoff. There was big gaps between the BCS and what came before it. Like, you need, and this is kind of speaks to just society at large, of just in terms of how technology is just making everything change so rapidly. You're seeing it in college football here, where I'm not as concerned about the change itself. I am concerned that you are changing so many things in a very, very short amount of time that it overwhelms college football fans, that it overwhelms a lot of the folks that you're trying not to alienate. Because yeah, some of these will be good. Like, that's the thing, is like, people are worried about different things. Some of these have been really good for the sport. Some of these will continue to be really good for the sport. Other changes for the sport will continue to be good. There will be some misses, but that's part of change. Like, it's not all going to be perfect, but there will be some positives that come out from it. But fans won't notice those positives when you are changing so much. Like, their heads are spinning. Like, you don't want the sports fan base who have day jobs, who have other things going on, to not even understand what the playoff is anymore. Like, even with March Madness expansion from 64 to 68, it doesn't really change much. Your bracket didn't really take a hit when you had to add a couple more play-in teams. This is a little bit more complicated.
I do hate that too, though. It just makes no sense. 64 is such a clean bracket.
It really is, but we still say 64. Like, no one really says 68.
Yeah.
Like no one really thinks of it that way.
Your brackets in the ESPN bracket challenge aren't due until Thursday, right? We don't really even count those Tuesday, Wednesday games.
Right. And I just think when it comes to the college football playoff, I think ultimately where you're running into problems is like, man, you haven't even done the 12 and you're already doing the 14. It's like, there's nothing wrong with eventually getting to 14 potentially. Like, depending on where the sport goes, who knows? It might seem obvious that we add a couple more in if there are some good teams left out because you're at like 12. Why not? The problem is, you're not doing this for a long enough time to get people used to this format and to allow people to get used to the new version of college football. But when things change so much, I just cannot imagine. I mean, I do this for work, and I do this for a job, Matt, and you're already a diehard college football fan. But if you're not a diehard college football fan, I just wonder what's going through your mind when you read stuff like that. Like, you just see, what? They're already, why would they want to go? And we're not talking like 5 years from now. This is coming up for 2026 potentially. So it's like, we're going to get a couple of years of the 12 team potentially, and we're already moving the model. And I don't know. I think at some point, again, because there's no one person in charge of this thing to keep this thing level headed, we're just always going to have constant change. And I don't want to say anarchy, because it's not anarchy, but just kind of chaos. And it's not controlled chaos in a way. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just kind of frustrating, because you're like, y'all, that's the problem when I talk to casual college football fans, is like, it's a lot of change very, very quickly, and it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to keep up with for the casual fan.
For sure, because I remind people that all the time because college sports are always changing. Like the Big East was just invented in like 1980. Like the Big 12 like started in like 1996. It's like these conferences aren't ancient. Like we've seen all the different movement, like Miami and Boston College and Virginia Tech joining the ACC and that sort of thing. But it's just usually taken more time, to your point. Like imagine so we had 10 years of the 14 playoff. Like when were those decisions really made about going to 12? Probably 7-8 years in. And then it takes a couple more years to get everything figured out. If we made that decision 7-8 years into the maybe 7-8 years into the BCS era, the SEC is like, you know what? I feel like top to bottom, we have the best conference every year, but our teams are never getting in because our conference is too competitive. And LSU won one time and Tennessee won one time, but you're seeing Oklahoma and you're seeing USC and Miami. They're the ones that are getting in because they're able to go perfect with their schedule. And then they changed the rules because they didn't like how the first 6-7 years went. Like the SEC went on to win about 10 straight national championships under that same format. So if you're just I feel like we all overreacted to Alabama and Clemson. I've said this a bunch of times. Alabama and Clemson just being as dominant as they were for 6-7 years. And under any format in the sport, Alabama and Clemson are going to be the two best teams in the country for that 6-7 year period. They were head and shoulders just kind of better than everyone. And Clemson, maybe it's also kind of a benefit of playing in the ACC at the time, but regardless, they beat Alabama a couple of times too. So they were up there winning a couple national championships. Alabama's run with Saban is just unprecedented. And we all overreacted to, it's the same 4 teams every year, even though I don't think it was ever actually the same 4 teams in any of the 10 playoffs. So it's really unfortunate that I think we overreacted and jumped all the way to 12. If you had it to 6 or 8, I don't think I would overreact the way I do. But I think just with what the regular season is in college football, and that's the other part that sucks with this conference expansion element to this, the regular season was about to get so much better. Like the college football regular season, as great as it is, it's very flawed in terms of the balance and who's playing who, and Auburn and having to play Georgia and Alabama every year, while some other teams don't have to play a top 10 team the whole year. Like that aspect of it was flawed, but with getting these super conferences and bringing Oregon and Washington and USC to the Big Ten and bringing Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, you were going to get to see so many more satisfying regular seasons where, like, we look at the SEC schedule this year that it's like, I don't really care. Everyone's got a gauntlet. There is no like, oh, look at their schedule. Look at that. That's going to be easy. So our regular season was about to get better and a little more like concise. And now we just threw in another wrench into it where, okay, yeah, maybe now 5 SEC teams all get to have a chance to play for a national title. It's like, I just don't know who's that's in college football like wants this. I don't know anyone in college football other than the people that are making more money off of this. I don't know anyone else that actually wants this to happen.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem like it matters. We're just along for the ride, right? It's just there's only like I'm not gonna get super upset about it. Like it just seems like once this kind of stuff comes out, you're like, okay, well that's probably where it's going. Like they're probably gonna have a 14-team playoff in a couple of years, and then we'll see what that means. But one of the things we know it means right now is the new auto bid format. And I was curious for you, Matt Green. I assume this means we're only going to get one G5 school in the playoff in the 12-team era. I think it's going to be really hard for a ranked team to have that kind of CFP resume based on what we've seen from the CFP rankings the last few years. Multiple G5 teams making it in seems unlikely unless they have a really beefed up non-conference schedule that puts them in play. But do you like the change to the auto bid format? And part 2 to this question, do you think there should be auto bids still in the college football playoff?
So that's the second part is a little tougher to answer, but in terms of the first part seemed obvious. Like we were at 6-6 and the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore. Well, yeah, you can say what you want. If I don't know if Oregon State and Washington State are still in the Pac-12 or how that's.
Well, I think they
how
have the
that's
rights
actually.
now, so I think in the next couple of
Yeah,
years they
maybe
probably they absorb the
it
Mountain
does
West and
exist.
then the new Pac-12. I don't know.
Maybe the Mountain West will rebrand themselves to be the Pac-12
Mhm.
and keep all that. But without a Power 5, there's only Power 4, right? And we talked about it being Power 2, but there's a Power 4 essentially at this point. So it seemed only logical that you were just going to get rid of one of those automatic bids. So that part made sense. I don't necessarily have a problem with, the top 4 seeds being the top 4 high. Or is it the top 5 seeds now? Or is it just the top 4 seeds are going to be the top 4 conference champions?
Yeah,
And
so
that
basic
G5 school will get in, but not necessarily as the 5th seed.
correct. So they
Okay.
could be a top 4 seed, a G5 school. They could be ranked higher, but basically they are just guaranteed a top 5 spot, but the odds of them being ranked ahead of one of the 4 Power 4 champs seems unlikely. So you never know, I guess, but probably not.
I think the automatic bid exists to make conference championship weekend still relevant. Because
Mm.
if that's not relevant, then it's just playing for seeds and it's something, but it's not nearly what it is of like Alabama and Georgia. You could be playing for the 1 or 2 seed in the playoff, or you're number 5 or 6. Like that does make a difference there. So I guess that's probably the rationale there, but I don't necessarily have a problem with automatic bids because I don't see a scenario where at least the top 4 conference champions aren't top 12 teams. Like maybe you get to that 5th conference champion and you know it's basically in there to just get the G5 school in. But in a year where we got like number 21 Tulane or something like that, like it's a shame to include them over an actual like a 10-2 Power 5 team that just didn't win their conference or anything.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think it'll be fun, the 5 through 12 matchup and who that will be, and there will be a lot of pressure there, over the next couple of years to see that will be a must-see game. It's gonna be like, the 4th or 5th best team in, like, the SEC or Big Ten going to, like, Tulane or something, in a do or die game. That'll be fun. I mean, either way, maybe they sneak into one of those top 4, but I think that's also probably fair, and like you said, I think, it's a good point of, like, it keeps conference title games relevant. But I think we've talked about this, and I've talked to some of the people in the know here through text the last couple weeks where I'm like, and they agree where it's like, if you're going to do this, and we're not going to relitigate the college football calendar, and yeah, they're moving signing day a little bit, which should help. Early signing day, basically moving free agency a few days before the portal should help, so that coaches are not having to do signing day plus the portal at the same time. So that should help a little bit. But all that to say, one of the ways that you're going to, because this is coming and we're going to just have to see it play out in real time in the college football playoff, but that weekend is valuable for the college football playoff. That weekend needs to be college football playoff games because you need to get as many games in as humanly possible before chaos ensues, because there will be some more Malik Murphy transfers during the college football playoff. So you kind of need those weekends, and you kind of need to move the season back. I think college football has to start thinking about this, and I don't know if they are, who knows, but like, that's my thought, is why like the conference championship game, just with this expansion, I just don't think you need it anymore, because you need that weekend for the college football playoff more with the portal, signing day, and everything else. I just feel like I just feel like it would be better served for the opening weekend of the college football playoff versus conference title games, which really don't matter in the grand scheme of things anymore.
Well, and like you said, not to get too much off on a tangent, but like the signing day being moved up, like that just baffles me. Like if anything, we should just be getting rid of the early signing period.
Yeah.
And let all of the portal stuff work itself out. So these high schoolers, they know what situation they're getting into. They know, oh, I was going to go there as a quarterback and they just got a starter from wherever to transfer in. I don't want to go there now. Like, so I think it would only make sense. I think the NFL is opposite, right? The draft is before free agency, but the draft's also much cleaner than signing day. It's kind of our comparison, but signing day is absolutely is absolute chaos compared to the knowing what your pick is and everything in the NFL draft. So I just think it's a slippery slope. It's better than having signing day in the middle of a college football playoff preparation, but yeah, that part's that's also questionable. But in terms of the automatic bids, like it's this same just kind of lie we keep telling ourselves, that the G5 is playing the same sport as the Power 4. It's not the same. So I'm all for, and I think automatic bids would keep the importance of the regular season. If we had some sort of 8-team playoff and you had a Power 4 conference, and those were all of the teams that were essentially playing for the playoff, and the G5 had its own thing, like those automatic 4 spots, it only leaves 4 more for all of the other at-large teams. And it seems like that would still have a strong regular season, because we do love how in college basketball, like you take care of business and win your conference, you'll get in the tournament. Obviously they have a lot more spots to work with, but it'll play spoiler for some of those bubble teams. But if you weren't a tournament team going into the conference tournament, but I think that idea in an actual like equitable like Power 4 structure makes a lot of sense. Like how the NFL does, if you win your division, you get a home playoff game. Sometimes you see an 8-8 team get a home playoff game. Oh, well, that's going to happen every once in a while. But it feels like it still keeps the same just intensity of the regular season when there are a limited number of spots, because some of those are going to go to automatic qualifiers.
I agree. Matt Green, dog bites this week. Georgia, 2 openings, like Tennessee had 2 openings for positional coaches, and then they quickly made some moves to address those 2 openings. Del McGee to Georgia State, new head coach there, and then Brian McClendon obviously on his way to join Liam Cohen in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But what can you tell us this week on your dog bite, sir?
Well, to start with, this is huge news because Del McGee, he's an OG when it comes to the Kirby Smart staff. Like he and Glenn Schumann were the last 2 left from Kirby's original staff in 2016. Ironically enough, James Coley was also on that 2016 staff, who's now the new wide receiver coach. But I think Del McGee is going to be a tough guy to replace. But to go start with James Coley, like I think James Coley is an absolute home run hire as the wide receiver coach for Georgia. I think I kind of compare it to Will Muschamp when he was at South Carolina. He kind of became a punchline in amongst fans of, he has his temper tantrums and all that, and he was a failed head coach at 2 different spots. And people kind of forgot that, oh, no, but this is one of the elite defensive minds in college football. And just because he isn't a great head coach doesn't mean he's not a great recruiter and a great defensive mind. And if you have him doing that, he's going to be a huge asset to you. James Coley is one of the best recruiters in college football, specifically recruiting South Florida. And I think we all know the kind of talent that comes out of South Florida. That's a place you want to have a guy that knows a guy, right? So James Coley was a failed offensive coordinator. He did poorly at Miami. He did poorly in his 1 year as the Georgia OC in 2019. And I think a lot of people are going to hear that and think, oh, James Coley, that's Georgia's just trying to figure out. They don't even have a good guy to go to. Whereas, no, James Coley is not going to be the offensive coordinator. He's going to be a wide receiver coach, and he's going to be a hell of a recruiter. And from that perspective, I think that's just a home run for Georgia.
Yeah, and I think friend of the pod, Graham Coffey, had a good tweet about this, where it's like Kirby, with these 2 hires, specifically Coley, like you alluded to, it just keeps up the track record that like he's going to prioritize recruiting good recruiters for these positional coaches above all else. And Coley is one of the best recruiters in the country. So getting him back in, and Georgia fans who have the memories of his 1 year stint as the OC, it's like, that's not what he's being asked to do here. It's a very different kind of thing, and you need some like positional coaches are tricky in terms of like how you manage how many just straight X's and O's like positional knowledge guys with recruiting guys, because you need every staff has to juggle okay, we can't have too many X's and O's guys. We still have to have guys who can get us to Jimmys and Joes. So you have to pick and choose which positional coaches have more of one of the other. You know what I mean? Like every staff has to go through this balance, and it's not just Georgia and Tennessee, but like I think what Georgia did and what Curry continues to do is he's like he understands, and this is what Graham was talking about in the tweet of like talent still trumps all, and Kirby Smart is not going to make it even when he loses his two best recruiters on the staff and Del McGee and Fran Brown in the same offseason. He's rebounded to strong and he's brought in big time recruiters and he's going to keep this train moving in that regard. So Georgia fans, like, don't worry about what that 1 year blip with Coley was. I mean, I think Coley's going to be fine. And I think it's a good hire. And then you even mentioned like, so what can you tell us about Georgia going to the well and just losing Del McGee to an in-state school to also being like, all right, well, we can play this game too, and we're going to go ahead and get Mr. Crawford from the flats, sir.
Well, that's it. The last thing I'll say about Coley too, if you go back to 2018, before he was named OC, like that wide receiver group had Riley Ridley, Mecole Hardman, JJ Holloman, Terry Godwin. Like that was one of Georgia's like deeper receiver groups and Fromm's best year of his career also. So Coley definitely has a history of what he can do, what he's shown he can do at Georgia. But yeah, like you said, going to back to Del McGee, this is now the sixth head coach that has come from Kirby Smart since he took over in 2016. I think Georgia State, I think, is an absolute home run hire. Like because of his high school connections, I think that's the biggest aspect to this. Because I noticed when looking at Josh Crawford, the guy they just got, who was at Georgia Tech this past year, I think he was a wide receiver coach at Georgia Tech after a couple years at Western Kentucky. This guy's been at Greater Atlanta Christian. He's been at Colquitt County. He's been at Valdosta. Like he's been at all kinds of high school, big time high school football programs in the state of Georgia. And I think that's what you focus on here, because to lose a guy like Del McGee, it felt like he was kind of the high school guy on Georgia's staff, that he just had all those built relationships all around the state of Georgia. And I think you're seeing once again, Kirby Smart prioritizing recruiting over everything else and getting another guy who's been a high school football coach in the state of Georgia from 2010 to like 2020.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I always wonder though, like, because it's like a same deck hire for Georgia State. I understand when people say stuff like that. It's still a tough job, man. I just think G5 jobs are brutal right now. So, look, like I get the excitement there, but I'm still cautiously optimistic. Just because of the nature of those jobs and like how many guys you lose to the portal every season. Like Georgia State just got rated again. I'm sure Del McGee will retain a lot of guys and he will recruit well, but you have to re-recruit over and over again at the G5 level now, where it's just really, really hard to retain your best guys. And I don't know. I just think that's why you're seeing like G5 guys like Sean Lewis, who leaves Kent State to be the OC at Colorado and takes a shot there. Even at the Power 5 level, you see some lesser Power 5 programs that have some NIL questions and just stability questions. Like Chip Kelly, he jumped ship for a coordinator job at Ohio State. Like, I don't know. I think Del McGee taking this is still a huge. It's a word. If you're Georgia State, you do this 10 times out of 10. But I wonder if you're Del McGee, like it's not the same as Fran Brown taking Syracuse. Like Syracuse has had history of success. It's still a P2 or excuse me, Power 5 job. This is a little bit more of a, all right, let's see how it goes. I mean, it's not like this is a slam dunk big history of success there. It's not like Georgia Southern where you can gobble up the win, stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I think you wish him well and you hope for the best, and it's a worthy swing for Georgia State. But I just think those G5 jobs, man, are so tough. And I wonder if I just wonder about like if it was the better path to be an OC at another Power 5 spot if you can't be OC at Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I was definitely surprised because I mean we see a guy like Sean Elliott leave Georgia State, and I think they hadn't been doing very well, right? So he might have been kind of.
He was a 500-ish, and they were about to have probably a pretty bad year. This year.
Like maybe I'm on a sinking ship and I need to go get on a Power 5 staff. Who knows what's going to happen with the future of the G5. But it's interesting to have that guy leaving to go to a South Carolina position coach and have a guy leaving what we can probably call the best program in college football, right?
Yeah.
George leaving a position coach job there. And he had one of those like associate head coach type titles. Like he'd been there for a long time. And so to see him go to Georgia State, that was a little surprising. Like his name was thrown out there, like when the Auburn job was, he is an Auburn alum. Like,
Yeah.
and maybe he feels like I'm never going to be taken seriously for one of those jobs if I don't have some head coaching experience first. And he's 50 years old. You know, he's not a super young guy. But I would say I was surprised. But I do think if there's a guy who can make Georgia State work, I feel like it's a guy who's going to have those high school connections. It's going to really be able to pitch Atlanta and everything like that. And also, when was the last time you went to, I don't know what it's, Turner Field? I forget, what, Center Park Stadium or something like that.
I believe you.
I actually drove past there. I was dropping off Tori at the airport last week. That area is completely different. Like all the parking lots and everything, Turner Field, there's like apartments. It's like, it's an insane area. The basketball arena is over there now. Like it's kind of crazy what they've built up. So the Georgia State branding on formerly Turner Field has gotten way better. So it feels like there's not many G5 schools that kind of have the like bones that Georgia State has, you know, just being in that blueprint or in that recruiting footprint that Atlanta is, and Georgia Tech also being like one of the less competitive power big boys, you know, in the same city. I don't know. I think it's got a lot going for it. We'll see. It's definitely gonna be a challenge because when you're at that level and you do find a diamond in the rough, then the power programs will just come scoop them up.
No, 100%. And we'll see how it goes. Wish him the best and good luck over there in Atlanta. But what about, speaking of Georgia Tech, the big hire there as the Dogs' new running backs coach?
I think the biggest thing, like I was saying, is just the recruiting aspect to it. I think to have a guy that's got so much history of being a high school coach. He was never even a head coach in high school, but he's just been all over, you know, Metro Atlanta down to South Georgia. And I think that's why he got this job. Like, I don't think he's there anything he did at Western Kentucky or Georgia Tech that got him this job. I think it's definitely his high school presence. And I think that's what jumped out to me, that like James Coley is replacing McClendon. Like, you're kind of getting, you know, a guy who's got a more proven, I think, track record. McClendon was a good recruiter, but I think Coley's got a more proven track record as a recruiter and kind of has his niche, if you will, in niche in South Florida. But I think with this, it's like it's gonna be hard to replace, you know, Del McGee. Like so many of the big time running backs and the big time recruits Georgia got, you know, Del McGee was a big part of. But I think you're seeing he was definitely the direct replacement just because of his and just with his high school connections.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of history. Like, he's Lee County, Valdosta, Colquitt for many years. Started out at GAC. Shout out to GCO, but part of some great Western Kentucky offenses. And I think this is just a brutal blow for Georgia Tech because that's going to be really hard to replace. And on that side of the staff, I mean, you still got Buster Faulkner, who excelled year one as OC for Brent Key, but that's tough to lose a rising star in the coaching industry like Josh Crawford just an hour up the road to your rival. That's tough, man. You don't see this very often. Who was the last Tech? I mean, do you remember one of a previous Georgia Tech coach who made the jump to Georgia?
No, I think like Buster Faulkner, like you said, that's one of the few I can remember, like going from Georgia to Georgia Tech. And, you know, I remember JJ Green and who was it, Brent Seither, I think this past year, like transferring from Georgia to Georgia Tech. I can't, as much of a rivalry as it is, like they're not really in the same ponds, if you will. So you don't see as much overlap in their Venn diagrams, if you will. So yeah, I don't remember the last time that Georgia poached a coach from Georgia Tech.
Yeah. It's interesting, but either way, I think you're and Georgia fans should be excited about both hires there because I think two big ones for the Dogs and replacing some big names there. SEC 2023 schedule review series, Matt Green, as we continue this weekly installment. This week, Arkansas, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Did they win enough games based on how their schedule ended up unfolding? Was it not enough wins based on what you and I saw as their expectations? And then maybe it was just right based on the schedule. Was just the amount of games they should have won, realistically speaking?
I'd say this is one of the easier ones we're gonna do on this on in this series because they were one of the, I think, bigger underachievers in the entire conference a year ago. I think Arkansas finishing 4-8, winning one conference game, like it's just I don't even know where to start. Like, I mean, they did lose. I think it's 5 of their 8 games were by one score, and Florida, as bad as Florida's season was, they have that other notch in their belt. That they were Arkansas's only win of the entire, only conference win of the entire season. But seeing what KJ Jefferson was in 2021 and 2022, I feel like he came into 2023 as the most like underrated player in all of college football. This guy threw 45 touchdowns and 9 picks in 2021 and 22 combined, like 600-700 yards rushing both years, like flirting with double-digit touchdowns on the ground. And you saw like once Art Briles is the head coach, is his dad, right?
Kendall Briles, yeah.
Once Briles left Arkansas, like, and it was Dan Enos running that offense. I think that's the biggest game changer you saw. Like KJ Jefferson was not the same last year. He even missed a couple games in 2022. He only missed one last year, and his stats were nowhere near what they were the past 2 years. Like, I just, even running the ball, like I had 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, he just was not effective. And I don't know what happened. I think you look at the OC, that's probably the biggest explanation right there. But yeah, Arkansas just, I mean, losing to Mississippi State the way they did, like this team missing a bowl game, I think there's really no excuse for that. Like, and on top of all of the close
They
games
lost to
they
BYU at
lost,
home.
exactly, and on top of all the close ones they lost too, like they got blasted by Auburn, like they got blasted by Missouri too, but Missouri was good last year. Like that getting just destroyed by Auburn, that was the one that stood out. That was like, oh, maybe they've given up on Sam Pittman. Maybe this is like actually over now. So that was the one that really, because to that point they kind of seemed like a snake bitten team that were like, I mean, other than Mississippi State, they lost 7-3. Like that's just a terrible performance. But like they played Alabama close, they played Ole Miss close, they played LSU close. Like they played BYU close. So it was a lot of like, yeah, the ball's bouncing the wrong way. Sam Pittman, like you saw how tough it is to have to replace 2 coordinators in 1 year. And in a place like Arkansas, it's going to be a little tougher to do that than a bigger program. So I think without a doubt, there were some things that just bounced the wrong way. But I mean, this team was a huge underachiever last year.
It was interesting because we pushed back on this show where we both like KJ Jefferson. I didn't like the Dan Enos hire, where it just kind of scared me. And this is one of those things where, and I would buy some KJ Jefferson stock this year. I think he's probably going to be pretty good at UCF with Gus Malzahn and company. I would probably buy some KJ bounce back stock there. But
I mean, well, what he did with like Nick Marshall, that's got to be like an upgrade on Nick Martin. Like he's not Cam Newton. I don't want to throw that out there, but he's like,
or John Reese Plumlee. John Reese Plumlee thrived under Gus. And I mean, that's a hard guy to make work. I mean, he's 2-sport athlete. John Reese has his ability, but it's not like he's a downfield assassin. And he was really, really good for Gus down there in Orlando. So KJ should be good.
Sorry, I'll not to interrupt you again, but we also note how guys always get worse in like the second year with Malzahn. He's only going to have 1 year. So maybe he's got a 1 and he'll be able to boost his draft stock.
That is true. That being said, like this is one of the worries when you hire a CEO type coach, right? Is you're one bad coordinator cycle away from it really imploding on you. Because look, Georgia can lose guys. They can lose Dan Lanning. They can lose Mel Tucker. It doesn't matter. It's still Kirby Smart's defense. Like guys can come and go, but the defense is going to be just as good year in, year out. when you have a positional coach who's an elite side of the ball coach, whether it's offense or defense, like Josh Heupel can lose Alex Golish to USF. And yeah, it hurts, but it's still Heupel's offense. Heupel is still going to develop the next wave of guys, and you don't really worry about it because you know what to expect year in, year out. There's not a lot of change there. When you hire someone like Sam Pittman, who good recruiter, great offensive line coach, the problem is if you are successful like he was early on at Arkansas, your coordinators are going to get picked off. Like they're going to go somewhere else. And TCU opened up because Lincoln Riley's brother, why am I blanking on his name? Not Spencer Riley, Garrett Riley. Garrett Riley goes to Clemson. So that job opens up. He goes back to Texas, this, that, and the other. That can happen. The other thing that can happen is Barry Odom was a star defensive coordinator, and that was a great hire. Like Sam Pittman hired well. He hired too well. And then Barry Odom takes a surprising job out west to UNLV, which is a program that hasn't really worked in our lifetime, Matt Green, and he's had a lot of success there. So I think the combination of Pittman losing both and just the drop off there was a lot more than I think a lot of folks had anticipated. And I think that's the worry when you hire a CEO, lineman, not offensive or defensive whiz leading your program, because if you're good, you're eventually going to get those guys picked off. And it's really hard to hire consistently well over and over again and keep that same flow going, because Dan Enos is completely different than what Kendall Browse was running. And there was a different with Williams from what Barry Odoms was running. Like, it's just really hard to have that be a sustainable model in not even just today's college football, but just in general. So I think that's always a risk for any teams that hire one or the other, because you're going to eventually get picked off, and it's really just hard to make that work long term, I think.
No, and I think that's fair. I look at Arkansas, and it's hard to know, like, underachieving and overachieving is like a really hard word to use somewhere like Arkansas, because were they really 9-4? Did they overachieve to be a 9-4 in 2021? And then they kind of came back down to earth. But I think you were expecting at bare minimum them go to a bowl game. So I think Arkansas is definitely one of those programs. And like, I think everyone loves Sam Pittman. I think he's just a likable guy, but you got to think he's going into 2024 with a little bit of a hot seat.
They're projected. We went through our betting totals for the SEC last week. I mean, they might be the worst team in the SEC this year, Matt Green. That's on the table.
Is that really worst team in the SEC?
3.5, 4.5 wins. I mean, they're right there in that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another that's tough. So they go at Oklahoma State at a conference, and then add Texas and Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, A&M. It's not an easy schedule for sure.
A lot is riding on that Bobby Petrino hire.
It's going to be. Yeah, that's true, and we didn't even mention that. I think that is massive. I think we've seen, but they don't have KJ Jefferson anymore, so they're also replacing that position completely. So I don't know. And you also Rocket Sanders missing a lot of time in 2023. Like, he was probably the best running back in the SEC, or one of them, in 2022. And so, the injuries that definitely played a part. I wonder if they miss a bowl game, is he definitely fired?
Definitely no. Most likely yes, would be my guess.
I didn't even say Missouri either. There's like 5 preseason, like, top 15 teams on the schedule.
Arkansas is just one of those.
And that's not counting A&M and Oklahoma State and Auburn.
I've pitched this. They won't do it because of the money, obviously. But like, if you're Arkansas and you see Texas and Oklahoma coming in, and you see what the Big 12 is and what you can recruit year in, year out, like, is there not a part of you it's like, we'll take less money to win a whole lot more in football? You're already good at basketball and baseball. Like, basketball is obviously the best in the Big 12 this year. Make the jump back. Take less money.
But you don't stay good at basketball and baseball without that money, without that football money.
No, baseball for sure. Baseball is not a part of it. Like, baseball will be fine, and they're good again in baseball. It's going to be I think Tennessee and Arkansas.
But football is the beast that feeds everything else.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, the wins would come back, and we would view Arkansas very differently if they were playing in the new Big 12 over the next couple of years. Like, they're
how
going to
we
be.
would view them, we would not watch their games. That's how we would view Arkansas when they're
I don't
playing
know.
Kansas.
I think they would be good. Like, I think that they would be a perennial favorite in the Big 12, year in, year out. Did you off the top of your head? I don't want you to look, Matt Green. I don't want you to look right now. Who do you think had the best recruiting class of the new Big 12 this past cycle?
I think I actually saw this. It was Texas Tech, right?
No.
Who was it?
UCF.
Wow.
You can out recruit UCF. Arkansas could have the most talented team in the Big 12 year in, year out if they just make the move back.
This team went 9-4 in the SEC in 2021.
I'm saying you could be a perennial college football playoff team in the Big 12.
That's probably true, but
you're never sniffing it here.
They would not be. They would be a worse. That doesn't mean they would be a better team just because they were going to another conference.
Oklahoma and Texas are in this conference now, Matt Green. Arkansas, they are a quiet big loser from the jump. People have talked about Vandy and stuff. I'm like, that's not really the team who's really hurt is Arkansas. Like, Arkansas is, those are two recruiting rivals that now have the same amount of money and resources. Like, that's brutal. Like, Arkansas, I think, is actually getting the shortest end of the stick. Like, A&M's going to be fine with those two coming in. I don't think Arkansas is going to be fine.
I think Arkansas is right there with, like, I think like teams like Kentucky and South Carolina are a step below that also lose with the expanded SEC. But I think Arkansas is a program that's right there with like Ole Miss. But Ole Miss right now with what they're doing in the portal, like this Ole Miss team, they're feeling really good about. So they're not on the same level in 2024. But I feel like as far as programs go, they were consistently those like 4th and 5th teams in the SEC West, with Oklahoma and Texas coming over, it's definitely going to make it more challenging.
Matt Green, we continue on to our betting win totals here in this offseason. More and more are coming out each and every week, but BetOnline has the new ACC regular season win total over under, sir. We did the SEC last week, so check that out on this very feed if you missed that. But this week, ACC staying in the South here, or the West, because it now it spans the entire United States with Cal, SMU, and Stanford in the conference, which was just really weird to see when you look at this thing here, Matt Green. But my first question, which total is the most shocking to you when you look at this ACC 2024 win total?
All right, so it's tough to say. So I've talked about Syracuse and kind of just their schedule making them kind of a contender, just with who they avoid and them sitting at 6.5 wins. Like, it feels tempting, first year head coach, not sure exactly what to expect. They've made a little bit of noise in the portal.
Chris Brockman of the Rich Eisen show was on last week, and he's like, they're going to the playoff. Like, I love his optimism. Like, Fran Brown, excitement right away. Kyle McCord, if he's good. They avoid, we should say for the listeners who don't know, Syracuse they avoid Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. I don't even know how that's possible, but they avoid the 3 best teams in the conference this year. Syracuse 6.5. That explains it. Like, their schedule is fantastic for year one for Fran Brown.
But I'm saying the 6.5. I would almost go more because they're
I would go over 2 right now. Like, I would hit over on Syracuse
for sure. And then seeing Florida State at 9.5. I guess you're just worried that like there's not an elite team in this conference, but it feels like this conference is Florida State's like for the taking right now. And it should be. I'm not saying they are like clearly better than Clemson, but it feels like
I don't even know it's
two ships passing in the night, kind of like Clemson's on the way down, Florida State's back on the way up. 10-2 just feels like kind of worst case scenario for Florida State with like they should be the heavyweight in this conference now.
We'll get to it, but I think Miami's actually the best team in the conference this year. But we'll get to Miami. I think it's a 3-team top team race between Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. The problem I have with Florida State is I think they have the worst quarterback of the 3, and I think I'm just not a big DJU guy, and I think there's going to be a big drop off from Jordan Travis.
Are you a big Cade Klubnik guy though?
I'm a bigger Cade Klubnik guy than DJU. Yeah,
I think I'd go with DJU over Cade Klubnik. Like, I think Clemson looked better in 2022 than they did in 2023.
I mean, Cam Ward right out of the gate here, by the way. So many college football fans casual fans who are going to be like, wait. Is that Cam Ward? And you're just going to see Miami be awesome right out of the gate here. Like, Cam Ward is going to be so much fun in Miami. Like, I don't think people understand how big of an underrated last minute turn of events that was for Miami to get Cam Ward in the building, because I didn't know what they were going to do at quarterback. There were some options, but a lot of unproven guys, and you weren't feeling good. Cam Ward is a difference between like you go into the playoff or not. Like, that's like Miami is now. I mean, they've recruited really well with Mario Cristobal since coming in there, but I just I've gobbled up a lot of Miami stock this cycle. So, but that's not my most shocking. I like. So, do you want to stick with Syracuse or Florida State is the more shocking over under to you?
I would say I'm not necessarily shocked by either. They're just two lines that stood out to me. And Florida State's probably they're kind of being in different ways affected by the schedule, because Florida State probably does have one of the more challenging schedules in the conference, even though they obviously don't have to play themselves, but they do have to play Clemson, they do have to play Miami, and they have Notre Dame in that rotation as well. So it's definitely not the easiest schedule in the ACC.
I think it's surprising to see Wake Forest again at 4.5. Like, what's happening there? I just feel bad. Like, we've been so used to the Clawfins just gobbling up wins and winning consistently in the ACC. They had a rough year last year, and to see 4.5 again for them, like missing another bowl game, maybe another like 3-9 bad year.
Hey, it's what they deserve for injuring Ryan Filipowski. Just absolute classless fans over here. Wake Forest Demon Deacons. No, I was watching that live, and as soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh man, this is about to be the biggest story in sports right now about court storming."
I think you just combine Ryan Kelly, former Duke big, with Kyle Filipowski.
Did I say Ryan Filipowski?
You said
Who's Ryan Filipowski?
I don't know. I thought you were about to say Ryan
person?
Felipe. Ryan Felipe, maybe. But I was like,
I'm not sure.
Who?
Kyle Filipowski. There you go. Yeah, that was unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think your boy Sam Hartman was holding that program together, and I don't know. They've really fallen off.
Very handsome, that Sam Hartman. Which is the best buy now bet of all these win totals for you? Who would you suggest to your buddies? Like, hey, I would jump on this over under for this total for this ACC team.
I guess I gave away my answer at the start. Syracuse is definitely the best buy low candidate from the jump. Just because of that schedule. Not to sound like a broken record, but also I don't really have any insight to talk about them right now, but North Carolina seems to only do well when no one thinks they're going to do well. So maybe now that North Carolina's off the radar, they'll actually have a good season next year.
I mean, 8.5 still solid. Like, that's just probably, I just feel like it should be 8.5 every year of the Mac Brown era. Like, that just feels like the right number, because even if you think they'll go 10-2 and break through, that's the year they go 7-5. But they're somewhere around 8.5. Like, that just should be where it is. But I mean, they have the talent to be 10-11-1, whatever, depending on their quarterback play. I mean, 2 NFL quarterbacks back to back, and I mean, they've recruited really well in that department and had good receivers come out, good running backs. Like, they've produced a lot of talent, but it just hasn't unfolded that way. But for them in terms of really breaking through atop the ACC. But you know who I might say here, Matt Green?
Who's that?
Louisville Cardinals, 8.5 seems like they just broke through in the ACC title game. They might be a good buy low right now. They went 10-4 last year. They went 7-1 in the ACC. They had a really good ACC schedule, similar to what Syracuse is facing here. But his last 3 years as a head coach, he was 8-5 in 2022 at Purdue, 9-4 the year prior, and then his last 2 years at Western Kentucky, 10-3, 12-2. I don't know. I just am let's just bet the over on Jeff Brom, because I think he's just one of the best coaches in the sport. Like, he's probably somewhere in that top 15 range. Like, they're not flashy. It was Plummer last year. Who is it this year? Who is their transfer quarterback this year? I can't remember off the top of my head. They have another one
off the top of my head.
I gotta look
at their schedule, and just so many of those key games are on the road this year. Like,
Tyler
they
Shuck.
have to go at. Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck. Yeah.
So, I think Brom, I trust to get the best out of the quarterback position. But yeah, they go at Notre Dame, at Kentucky, at Clemson. Still have Miami at home. It's gonna be tough because I just think a lot of their 2023 success was just based on the weaker schedule that they played.
I can see it. I don't know. I always bet on like good coaching for these early ones, or I'm like, I don't know. Jeff Brom, can he pull 9-3 out of Louisville this year? I mean, I think that's possible. So that'd probably be one I would jump on. Who was the hardest to get a feel for you when you look at the number? This one, just if you don't have one right away, I have one, and I wonder if it's the same.
All right, hit me with yours.
It's Virginia Tech at 7.5.
I could see that.
Like, they have not been good quietly in a long time now, Matt Green. Like they're falling off. Like the Virginia Tech of old is long gone. Brent Pry, it's been a long-term rebuild here coming in for Justin Fuente. They have a little bit of a breakthrough this past year, but 7.5, it just was kind of like, oh, Virginia Tech moving in the right direction. 7.5. Like that's good. You're only one away from NC State and UNC, like two really good football programs year in, year out. Like maybe Brent Pryce really turned the corner here in Blacksburg. I don't know. That one's a hard one to get a read on. I would stay all the way away from a 7.5 Virginia Tech mid-February bet, but it is interesting that they are like in the conversation for like 8 wins, 8-4 Virginia Tech, which would be huge for Brent Pry this year.
Well, yeah, and after coming off a bowl game too, like at least they feel like they're trending in the right direction. But I mean, I can't bet that they win 8 games. Like that just seems like way too much. I would say the toughest one for me to get a read on is Duke, because Mike Elko, I mean, he's turned this team into a 9-win team, then 8-win team a year ago. Like to be like one of the more respectable programs in the SEC or in the ACC. And now it's like I have no idea what they're going to be. Is the cupboard absolutely bare? Like did he take everyone he wanted with him, and obviously Riley Leonard going to Notre Dame? Like I don't know that Duke sitting at 6.5. I don't know that I can bet on them going over that. And I don't know they're making a bowl game in 2024 after being one of the more consistent programs the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Manny Diaz, he's had success. I think he's a good coach. I think that's losing Mike Elko this early hurts if you're Duke, but I think Manny Diaz will be solid. I don't think it's going to be like a huge drop off. I think he keeps this thing. I mean, that Penn State defense was elite once again. Like Manny Diaz can coach defense. Like Mike Elko's great at it. Manny Diaz is a really good defensive mind, and I like their OC hire coming in from SMU. I think he'll be good. He's been with Rhett Lashley over there, and they've been electric in that regard. And I think he was probably with Manny years ago when he was at Miami, because he had Rhett Lashley too and all that. So there was some familiarity there. But I don't know. I think Duke, there will be a drop off, but I'm still probably pretty optimistic about Duke at this point. Yeah, I don't know. Virginia Tech, Duke, those are good ones. Good stayaways. Like that's a wait and see on that front. But Virginia Tech schedule, not bad. I could see it. And you go 7-6 this past year. Why not? This one I feel like we're going to disagree on, Matt Green. Miami 9.5, right there at the top, sharing that with Clemson and Florida State. Does that feel egregious to you, or do you see the rationale as to why Miami is right up there with the traditional powers of the ACC this year?
It's definitely not egregious. I understand where it's coming from. I feel like I just can't bet on Mario Cristobal at this point. Like I look at this schedule and look at what Miami has, the talent. I would not be surprised at all if they go 10-2. They could be 9-3. Excuse me. But they're just a hard team to bet on. I just don't know. I don't know that we get the best version of Miami. We saw them give away the Georgia Tech game. They were a game probably better than their record indicated in 2023. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're able to lose a game like that, it also says something about you. So I think this team's going to probably sleepwalk to about 5-0, 6-0. Well, I'm sleeping on the Gators in that season opener. That's going to be a good one. At Florida, like we've seen teams that are pretty good teams play their worst when they go into the swamp at Florida. So, and it's also the first game of the season before Florida fans have given up hope on what their season could be. So they're going to get the most hostile version of the swamp next year. But if they're able to beat Florida, they're easily going to cruise to like 6-0. And then it's just a matter of, how legit are they? Is Florida State really down, and can they take advantage of that? So I see like everything. I see the formula, right? But I just there's still something that's keeping me. I'm hesitant to buy the stock on Miami.
That's fair. Cam Ward, I just think he could have a Heisman type year at Miami, and it's a fun offense. It's one that, folks, if you looked right now, guess who had a better passing offense this past year? Miami than Florida State. Like, you look at it and you're like, look, man, Cam Ward and this group and where they are talent wise, like, yeah, there was obviously the Georgia Tech craziness, but like, I think they have good coordinators on both sides of the ball. I think Mario Cristobal is obviously recruited very well. There's a lot of talent on this Miami team. The schedule's not bad. I understand people's, and yourself included, being a little worried about buying into Mario Cristobal year in, year out. I don't know. I'm not sold on Clemson. I'm not sold on Florida State. And I just trust Cam Ward to be really good. I haven't seen a bad Cam Ward season yet at the FBS level or FCS level. I think he just raises their floor so much because Tyler Van Dyke was so hit and miss, so hot and cold, that we haven't seen this kind of talent at quarterback in Miami in a while. So for me, I'm just going to buy into that because I think the top of the ACC is kind of open right now, because I think this is a gap year for Florida State that, I don't know. I would buy a lot of Miami stock right now, and I think they should be in the college football playoff and they should win the conference this year.
So it's definitely not the same thing, and so I don't want this to be like, misinterpreted. But they feel a little bit like 2022 Penn State or 2023 Penn State, where I feel like I was buying Penn State for exterior reasons that weren't actually Penn State. I was buying that Michigan and Ohio State weren't going to be as good, and that was going to open things up for Penn State. It feels like the best reason to buy Miami stock is looking around at everybody else that doesn't look that good, and Miami should be able to step in there, but I don't know. I still don't know that they will.
That's fair. They were a very different team on the road and at home, especially defensively. So we'll have to see if that gets cleaned up this year. I don't know. I think it's fair to be
better at home.
Yeah, they're better at home.
That's almost kind of surprising since they don't have a home field advantage.
Hey, man, traveling's hard, man. The teams should play it no matter what kind of environment you're walking in. You should play better at home.
Sure.
Final thing here, though. Louisville, who was just in the ACC title game, Matt Green, they're not up there with Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, and 9.5 being their early win-loss betting over-under here. Are you raising an eyebrow that Louisville's not getting that same kind of respect in a kind of open top of the ACC, that Louisville's not up there, considering they were just in the ACC title game?
No, I think I kind of made, I guess I'm one of the ones disrespecting Louisville when it comes down to it, because I don't think they were that good a year ago. Like they played Florida State competitively in that game, but what did their offense have, like 65 yards or something? And that was like one of the worst offensive performances or one of the best defensive performances from Florida State, however you want to look at it. But I don't know. I don't think this team, I can't take Louisville that seriously until they kind of just, like, they almost have to like punch you in the face, like make it obvious to everybody that they are legit. Because I think at the end of the day, we see recruiting rankings and they're not everything, but they are a big thing. And Clemson and Florida State, Miami just continue to out recruit them. Even in North Carolina, that will get some big shiny pro prospects that people like and create more of a buzz. There's something about Louisville that's just like a chip on their shoulder. They got to continue to prove it. They don't, and North Carolina's not that brand than any of those other ones are by any means, but there's just something about Louisville that you got to make me continue to buy it, because I'm not there yet.
That's fair. I mean, they averaged 6.18 yards per play last year. What hurt them really down the stretch in December and January, they averaged 3.92 yards per play. And those was their 2 losses against Kentucky and or not Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky. Wait, no, Kentucky would have been November. Their bowl game. Who was their bowl game against? Because it would have been obviously Florida State who put the clamps on them, and then I can't remember who they put in the bowl game.
Let me see here.
Feels like forever ago.
They lost to USC in the bowl game.
Yeah. Also, did you see that stat about USC? I think Caleb Williams has never lost a game at USC when his defense allowed less than 30 points.
Wow, I did not know that stat.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just a random one where I was I had to look at it. I was like, wait, what? And then you're like, yeah, that's some interesting nuance when talking about Caleb Williams and where he's at as a player. It's like, hey, man, when his defense is even average, things are going pretty well for him as your QB1.
The Holiday Bowl is one of those bowl games that like it shows my hypocrisy with these corporate sponsors, because the Pacific Life Holiday Bowl sounds perfectly normal to me, but the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl, I'm like, this is just stupid. I don't know.
That's where you draw the line.
But I don't know, the corporate sponsors I grew up with, it's like those were okay. But once they changed the Nokia Sugar Bowl, then I was like, oh, this stuff's getting out of control. I don't know. Apparently, it's the DirecTV Holiday Bowl going into 2024. So they've stepped their game up a little bit. No disrespect to the San Diego County Credit Union.
I love it. Well, we'll end on this, Matt Green. It's early February. You can change this right now, but like, who do you think ends up winning the most games in the ACC this year? After looking at these early numbers,
I think Florida State is still my my favorite in the preseason. I know they lost a lot from that team a year ago, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson just kind of keeps going downhill. Like, I'm not saying their win total is gonna decrease, but I'm just not buying Clemson. And when it comes to Florida State and Miami, I think I trust Mike Norvell more than I trust Mario Cristobal. And DJ Uiagalelei is not great by any means. Like, but I feel like we're all sleeping on that he's like a pretty good player. Like, he wasn't supposed to be a 5-star prospect, right? He didn't make himself a 5-star prospect. Recruiting sites and different people labeled him a 5-star prospect. It's not his fault that he didn't live up to what certain people thought he was going to be. I think he's still a solid quarterback, and I think with what the ACC has, he's not Cam Ward. I give Miami the advantage there, but I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in this conference. And that's partly an indictment on the ACC, but I mean, how many quarterbacks in this conference are better, like are more proven than DJU?
I mean, Georgia Tech's quarterback is definitely better.
Is he?
Yeah, he's better. Why am I blanking on his name?
I'm blanking on it from Haynes King.
Haynes King, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
he's definitely better.
He's up there. He's one of the better ones, but I think the expectations of what DJU was supposed to be kind of clouds people's judgment on, no, he is just kind of a solid quarterback. He's not great. He's like the bad version of Bo Nix. I don't
know. I'm always going to bet on the best I'm going to bet on whoever is under center for North Carolina will be better than DJU this year, because North Carolina quarterbacks are pretty good. So I'll just go ahead and say he'll be better. Probably Grayson McCall at NC State. Right?
Yeah. I guess. I mean, not everyone can keep
Tyler Shook will absolutely be better at Louisville. Tyler Shook will be better.
Going up a level, though, isn't always the easiest in terms of Grayson McCall. So it's like, we'll see. I think DJU, he still has one of the higher floors. Like, his ceiling might not be that high, but I think he's like at worst like the 5th or 6th best quarterback in the conference. And at best, he could be one of the better ones. But I don't know. I don't think I think people are sleeping on him.
I will say this. I think there's a reason he's on his 3rd college football team at this point.
Hey, Cade Klubnik I feel like showed that DJU deserves an apology from some Clemson fans. Like, he was not great by any means in 2023. Like, DJU was not the problem at Clemson. That's the only way I'll put it. He was not Deshaun Watson. He's not Trevor Lawrence, but he was not the problem. He wasn't the reason that they weren't good.
I mean, he completed 64% of his passes, which is like 5% more, maybe more than that. I have to pull up DJU's, but like that's the main thing is like the completion percentage. Like, I mean, he was in the 50s last year at Oregon State, and he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. I don't know, man. I'm just not a TJU believer in terms of what he can be, and I don't know. I wish him well. I have a lot of Florida State fans in my family and alums and all that, so hope it goes different. But I don't know. I'm not sure Brock Glenn should not be the starter in Tallahassee this fall.
Ooh. I don't, and I'm not saying he's going to be a Heisman dark horse by any means. Like, I don't think he's like great, but I don't know. Watching Klubnik play for them a year ago, I did not think he was better in 2023 than DJU was in 2022. 2021, DJU was pretty bad. He was pretty bad that year, but I don't know, was it his redshirt sophomore or junior, however, I don't know how we're calling it. But in 2022, he was solid. And Oregon State, I think, they were a run first offense, so that allowed him to be a little bit more efficient, but than he was at Clemson. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm not gonna die on the hill defending him, but I think he's just not as bad as some people think he is.
I think there's a lot of boomer bust potential. Like, I think he might work out a good final collegiate season, or I think it just does not go well at all, and he doesn't make it through the whole year as the starter in Tallahassee. I don't know. We'll see, because they have options. Like,
yeah,
Brock Glenn's still there.
I wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever if he lost the starting job.
But I don't know. We'll see. That's what makes me think I'm gobbling up all the Miami stock. Cam Ward's gonna be great. Like, that's just one of those. I just feel really good. Like, Cam Ward's gonna be really good at Miami, and I think Miami should be the best team in the ACC this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that either.
Matt Green, always a pleasure. What do you want to do? Big 12 or Big 10 next week? Betting preview.
Let's have the Big 10 next week.
Okay. Big 10 next week and wrap up with the Big 12. We're Arkansas. Just saying. Gobble up the wins, gobble up the titles. Be a lot more fun. Make the trade. Who would you trade for Arkansas for the Big 12?
To bring someone into the SEC?
Yeah, who do you trade? Who's the trade?
Probably Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
I think maybe UCF, I guess, and you get kind of a more cohesive footprint, but I don't know. The idea of losing Bedlam to like conference expansion. I don't like that. So also West Virginia. West Virginia is kind of a wild card, but their fans, I feel like they would fit in with the SEC culture.
They really would. West Virginia is not a bad one. People are like, wait, what? And I'm like, West Virginia fans also don't have the expectation. I'm like, wow, what? I don't want to join there. It's like, you're not winning the Big 12 anyway. So like, you're not going to have a bunch of success in the SEC football. Like, you're just happy to be there, and also it'd be fun. Like, I would love to go with a Tennessee at West Virginia game. I'm sure you want to go up to Morgantown once to see what that atmosphere is like for the JT Daniels Bowl. Like, that'd be fun for you.
Absolutely.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.